Haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. Starting with Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the bottom, the beginning of the new Gemara. The Mishnah states there are 13 different shofaros, chests that are used to deposit for the Beis HaMikdash, for different items. Included in those are the kinin, the pair birds, which the Mishnah identifies as turtle doves, hein toirin. The Mishnah goes on to say that there's a machlokes as to what are these pair birds going to be designated for. According to Rabbi Yehuda, they're designated only as korban oilos, whereas according to the Chachamim, one is designated as a korban oila, but the other one as a korban chatos. The Gemara now explains with the following brisa the two shitas. The shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Tanya, it says in the following brisa, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Lo haya shofar shel kinin biyushalayim. They would not have a special shofar designated for the kinin, the pair birds, referring to the obligatory pair birds for the chatos. Mibnei hataroivos, because of the concern of taroivos, it will get intermingled. What is it going to be intermingled? Shema tomus achas. Maybe one of them, one of those women, let's say, that just gave birth and now has to then give a pair of birds. So if she would give a pair of birds that included a chatos, then that woman, if she were to die, the money that is inside of the shofar not only is possible, but since it's mixed up with the other monies, so the entire shofar is now possible, is now disqualified. So it comes out that that money, which was now given by a woman who's dead, is now affecting the entire shofar. Says Rabbi Yehuda, we're concerned about such an event whereby, therefore, all of the shofaros that are going to be designated for pair birds must be only for oilos and not for chatois. Ask the Gemara Vahatanya, Ha'isha she'omra, when a woman says the following vow, Harei olai, Cain, she says, upon me is a pair bird, Mevia demei Cain. She brings the value of the birds, she gives the money, V'noisantoi b'shofar, she puts it in the shofar, Yud-ches Amud Beis, V'oicheles b'kotshim, then she is toivel, and she is able to now eat kotshim. The Brisa goes on to say, we're not going to be concerned that the Kohanim will be lazy, because, as the Korban Ha'eda points out over here, that the Chazaka al Bezdin shel Kohanim, there are people, Kohanim, who are in charge, she'enon oimdin misham ad sheyichlu kol mois shel ois shofar. They ensure that all of the Kohanim, they use all of the money of that shofar to then bring the korbanos, so that the women who then donated that money towards the pair birds will then make sure that they are not mechusar kippurim. The Brisa goes on to say in the second line, Ve'ein hakohen choishesh shem demei chatos misois me'uravois bohen. The Brisa concludes that the kohen is not concerned about the money of the chatois being mixed up with the other money, namely that if the woman were to die, then that money would be mixed up with all the other monies, and that intermingled money would then be disqualifying the whole shofar. So here we have a brisa, and we don't see that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing. So this is a contradiction to what we just said before. Says the Gemara, no. Ki kamrinan bechatos shemeisu ba'alehin vadai. When did we say that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned, and therefore he doesn't make a special shofar for chatos? He says because that's when there's vadai, and therefore out of a concern for vadai, a woman dying, that will then be intermingled with the other money, then it's disqualified, and therefore he doesn't make a separate shofar for the pair birds that include obligatory offerings. However, if a woman did bring, and indeed designated for a chatos, until we know vadai, even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that would be valid. Ask the Gemara, V'amrinon, why don't we say Nivror Dalid Zuzi? Let's say the concept of Breira, that it is going to be clarified retroactively, that indeed the woman who did end up giving her four zuzi for the bird that died, then we'll take out those 4 zuzi and we'll say it was then those 4 zuzi that she gave. V'nishte be'nahara, we'll throw it into the Yam HaMelach. V'idach lishteru, and the rest will be permitted. So why don't we say that? And thereby, Rabbi Yehuda can then go ahead and allow a woman to give pair of birds that include obligatory offerings like a chatos. Says the Gemara, Ha'amrin ba'alma Rabbi Yehuda lesle breiro. Behold, we say in general that the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda is that we do not say breiro. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yoiso bi Rabbi Bun Omar Rabbi Bo bar Memel boy. He asked the following question: do they agree with me in the following? Omar, he said, if a person said Hare Olai 8, he says the following vow: it is upon me to then bring 8. He says it in the singular. He doesn't say 18, but he says 8. Mevi Gizar Echad. Do you agree with me that he then brings 1 Gizar, 1 block of wood? And that's his vow. Rabbi Lozar. Rabbi Lozar says, Masnisa Amrakain. The Mishnah says like that indeed it is valid to mechayev just 1 block. Shezeh korban b'fnei atzmo, v'zeh korban b'fnei atzmo. Because when it comes to the korban tamid, before the korban tamid was brought, so the kohanim, each one would bring a different block of wood. So you see over here that each block is a significant korban b'fnei atzmo. Like it states in the Mishnah there in Yuma. It states that amongst the different tasks that the Kohanim will perform, it says that there are 2 that are given the task of the Gizrei Eitzim. That means to say each one has a separate block of wood. So we see that a separate block of wood is valid, whereby if a person does make a vow of an 8, that itself will then mechayev him as a separate 8. Indeed, he will be chayev to bring 1 block of wood, a gizer echad. The Gemara now brings a support from the pasuk itself, korban. It states korban, and it says in the pasuk, ki takriv korban mincha. And we find that indeed, included in that korban, whatever is going to be considered in that korban will also be a valid korban. And it states in regards to that what's included amongst the other things, l'rabbo says ha'etzim. How to know to include eitzim? Because we have another pasuk. The other pasuk states in regards to the eitzim, it states over there, le'eitzim ha'garolas hipalnu korban ha'eitzim. We casted lots for the korban of eitzim. So we see that eitzim is called a korban. So indeed, we have from the pasuk itself that tells us that eitzim is indeed nechshav a korban. Rabbi Shub ben Levi Omar. Now we're discussing what is the block of wood, the dimensions over here. Says Rabbi Shub ben Levi, oivyon amma. The thickness is 1 amma. And he says, ba'amma soichekes. We're talking about an amma that is expansive. Meaning to say that the amma is 4 tfachim, and instead of being 4 gudolim that are close tightly together, but rather there's a little bit of a space in between each gudal, those 4 gudolim to make the tefach. So there's an expansive amma. The arkon ba'amma geduma. However, the length of the amma is a geduma, a small amma. L'char means a 5 tfachim amma. We saw that there's different types of ammos. There's a 5 tfachim amma, and there's a 6 tfachim amma, and there's a 6.5 tfachim amma. So included in this is the geduma l'chara of 5 tfachim. Rabbi Choini b'shem Rabbi Ami kimin tortoni. He says that the thickness of the block of wood is like a stick of a measuring scale, which is very thin, and it's like a kol shehu. Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchok lefi shelo haya makom hama'arocha ela amal ama. Since that ma'arocha, the pyre that was made in the Mishkan, was only measured as 1 amma by 1 amma, lefikach lo hava ki ela amma geduma. Therefore, the amma that we're talking about, the length, is only an amma of a short amma of a 5 tfachim amma. Now, the Gemara brings a support. V'tani came. We have a support for this. Amma hayesoid, amma soivev, amma karkoiv, va'amma kronos, va'amma ma'arocha. It states over here different parts of the mizbeach as being an amma. The base is an amma. The soivev is an amma. The walkway, the karkoiv, is an amma. The corners of the top of the mizbeach are 1 amma. And it's finally the ma'arocha, the pyre, is 1 amma. So therefore must be talking about an amma that is going to be the thickness, the length of the wood, to be only an amma that is going to be a limited amma, in order to then fit in this amma ma'arocha. The Mishnah states, Levoina lo yivchos mikoimetz. If a person then vows to then offer a levoina, then it can't be less than a koimetz. A koimetz is when the kohen closes 3 fingers, making a fist with 3 fingers. That amount is what the levoina has to be. So Gemara explains now. Where do we learn this from? Nemar kan azkara, v'nemar lahalan azkara. It says over here in regard to lechem aponim, the word azkara. It says also in regards to the mincha offering in azkara. Ma azkara amur lahalon moloi koimetz, just as it states over there. It's referring to a moloi koimetz in regards to the lechem aponim. Af azkara hamur kan moloi koimetz. So too, when it comes to the mincha, the stam mincha offering is also a moloi koimetz. And therefore, that's the amount that one has to then provide for the levoina. Ask the Gemara, Ima azkara hamura lahalon shnei kumtzin, af azkara hamura kan shnei kumtzin. But when it comes to the lechem aponim, indeed there's 2 kumtzin. There's 2 koimetz. 1 koimetz for the 6 showbreads, and another koimetz for the other showbreads. So therefore, he should require that it be 2 kumtzin when he makes a vow of a levoina. Rabbi Ila says, Klum lamdu likoimetz elo miminchas choite. Some have the gears of milechem aponim miminchas choite. Ma lahalon koimetz hachoser posul. Just as when it comes to there, in regards to lechem haponim, if it's missing a koimetz, it's going to be posul. In other words, even though there are 2 kumtzin in regards to the lechem haponim, those must be complete, each koimetz. In other words, you can't have the koimetz on one being a little more to compensate for the little less on the other koimetz. Each one has to have an independent koimetz. So you see from over here that indeed 1 koimetz is considered to be in itself a complete carbon. Afkan koimetz choser posul. Rabbi Yosef said, Milso de Rabbi Ila Omra. The matter of what Rabbi Ila has just taught us, then is the following: Hamiznadev levoina mevia koimso shel kohen. Since he's learning out from the lechem haponim, and the lechem haponim is done by the kohen, and therefore the kohen, who is going to then be doing with the biggest hand, because it's based on the size of the hand of the kohen that comes out to do the koimetz. So therefore, if a person is misnadev a levoina, it has to be then with the biggest hand of a kohen that is doing the service that day. Rabbi Chizkiah argues. Rabbi Chizkiah b'shem Rabbi Yirmiyahu says no. Va'afilu b'koimetz habaylim. since indeed it's not necessarily only lechem aponim, but rather we are learning from a regular mincha, and since the regular mincha is designated by its owner, and he chooses which coin to use, so therefore you don't have to use the biggest hand, and therefore it can be the koimates of the bailim of the owner itself. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah, Zov lo yifchois, if a person then makes a nedava, a vow of a zohav. So it says in the Mishnah, not less than the smallest type of coin, a dinar zohav. So the Gemara points out over here, when is that so? Says the Gemara, Om Rabbi Elazar, v'hu shehizkir tzura. That's what he mentioned, a coin. Then it's going to be the smallest type of coin. Aval im lo yizkir tzura, me'evi afilu tzinara. But if he doesn't mention coin and just says gold, then it's even the smallest kli, which is a small fork of a golden fork that's used in the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah goes on to say, Shisha l'nedava, there are 6 different shofaros for the nedava, which the Mishnah explains, which will then be used ultimately for buying a communal oila offering. And that's the communal offering is used for the Ketz Mizbeach, when there are no korbanos being offered. We don't want the Mizbeach to be bottled and left unused, so that there'll be an honor for the Mizbeach. Therefore, we bring communal offerings, and these are the 6 different kupois, 6 different shofaros for the nedava. So the Gemara wants to explain, why do we need 6 different ones? First explanation, Chizkiah or Markineged Shisha Bote Avos. We know when it comes to the Mishmaros, there are 24 different Mishmaros of Kohanim that serve in the Beis HaMikdash. They do it a different week, each Mishmar. They then do it twice a year. And each Mishmar that has a service of the week has also a Bote Avos. That means that each Mishmar is broken up to different parts of the different days. And each one then has their own service of the day. Comes Shabbos and they all serve together. So he says over here, in order for that, when it comes to these voluntary offerings, so in order to then avoid fighting between the Batei Avos, we will then designate each shofar for a different Beis Av, because what could happen is, since it depends on the day, there could be certain days where there's a very few offerings, private offerings, whereby they have to then use the communal offering money to then bring korban oilos. Then those kohanim that are designated for that day, they will then get the oros, the hides from those oilos offerings. Now, if there was another day that did not have very many of the communal offerings, then that Beis Av would not get very much. So in order to avoid fighting between Batei Av, so therefore they made different kupos, different shofaros, which each Beis Av designated to a different shofar, whereby whenever that money is given to that designated Beis Av, and whatever they have. And therefore there can't be any, to avoid any of the fighting. That's how Rebbe Chizkiah learns. Bar Padia Omar Keneged Sheish Behemos. It's corresponding to the 6 different behemos of the voluntary offerings that will be then given when a person puts the money in this kupa. Par ve'egil ve'soyer ayil gedi v'tle. Shmuel Omar. Shmuel has a third opinion of what these different kupos, why there's 6 different kupos for the nedavos. Shmuel Omar Keneged Shisha Korbanos. These correspond to 6 different korbanos. Most of them are really chatas and asham that will be designated. The Gemara says, for that, when there's a surplus, then they will be taking that surplus money and then being used for the communal offerings of the korban oila. What are these 6 different korbanos? Kinei zavim v'kinei zavois, the pair birds of zavim and zavois. Kinei yolodos, there's the pair birds of the woman who just gave birth. Chatois ve'ashamois, hamenochois ve'asiras ha'efa. Asiras ha'efa is that what the Kohen Gadol brings every day, Asiras ha'efa. So whatever surplus from that will then go to these funds to buy, again, the carbon oila, the communal carbon oila. Omar Rabbi Yochanan says, now the Mishnah had stated that Yehoyada, the Kohen Gadol, learned out that the ashamas and the chatois, whatever the surplus, will then go towards the carbon oila of the community. So now the Gemara explains, based on another pasuk of that has to do with Yehoyada, the Kohen Gadol. It says like this: Ksiv uchechaloisam. The pasuk says, Heviu lifnei hamelech v'Yehoyada. When they completed, they brought before the king and the Kohen Gadol Yehoyada. Es shar hakesef, the remaining kesef. Vaya'asehu keli in the Beis Hashem. It says that they made with them keli for the Beis Hashem, klei shares, the different kli shares, and it goes on to say v'ha'alois v'kapois v'klei zav v'kesef v'yu me'alim oilois b'Beis Hashem tamid kol yemei Yehoyada. That's the pasuk. So Rabbi Shimon bar Nachman b'Shem Rabbi Yonasan Omar, he explains shtei nedavois also. There must be two different nedavois, meaning to say there were two different chests, aronois, with two different nedavois. Now, why does he say that? Because there seems to be a contradiction between two psukim. That it states in one pasuk the aron is placed on one side, on the right side of the mizbeach, and the other one says that it's placed. The aron over here we're talking about is a kupa, is a chest, and the other pasuk implies that it was placed outside. So then the question is, what are they talking about? Must be talking about two different aronos, two different chests on top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph. That's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon bar Nachman in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. On top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph, it states, Tani de Rabbi Shmuel, Nedava Achas, he argues, it's only one Nedava, only one chest with one Nedava. Dersiv, it says in the Pasuk, Vayomer HaMelech, V'ya'asu ha'aron echod, V'yisneu behechal. And it says that the Melech says that they will make one aron, one chest, and they'll place it in the Heichal of Hashem. Goes on to say, Vayikoiv, referring to Yehoyada, Chur bedaltoi. And Yehoyada, he made a hole on the lid of this aron. So it's mashma that it's only one. I asked the Gemara, V'hoksiv, Vayomer HaMelech, and the Gemara says, V'hoksiv, Vayomer HaMelech, V'yasu aron echod, V'yisnei b'shar Beis Hashem, Chutza. The Gemara asks that, but we see that it's not only one. It seems over here from this pasuk that there's a second one. There's a one that says that it was placed in the chutzah outside, not just like you were assuming that it's only on the right side. So we have a second pasuk that indicates that there's two, just as the opinion before had stated. Rav Chuna says, no, it's really one, but they took it, the one that was placed on the right side, and they put it outside. Because of the tmeim, since the tmeim could not come inside, so to allow them to then give their donations in this kupa, so therefore they took it and they placed it outside, but it's really the same aron. Rav Chanina b'Shem Rabbi Yosef, he comes and says like the first opinion, that really there are two different aronos, two different chests. Because he brings the pasuk, Ach lo ye'ose Beis Hashem sipois kesef mizamrois. It says that they did not make, it wasn't made in the Beis Hashem, the sipois and the kesef mizmoros, different instruments. And the pasuk goes on to say, at the end of that verse, it goes on to say, Kol kli zov v'kli kesef, mina kesef hamuva Beis Hashem. And over here, it's explained that since this was used for ultimately those things for the Bedek HaBayis, so clearly it indicates that it's different than the one that we had stated before, since we started off by saying a pasuk, and that pasuk that we quoted had said in that pasuk, at the end of that pasuk we quoted as saying that was going for Ma'alim Oilos B'Beis Hashem Tamid Kol Yemei Yehoyada. So we see that indeed there are two different designations. So since there are two different designations, that implies that there must be two different aronos, whereby that's a proof that indeed we're not talking about just one chest, but indeed we're talking about two different aronos. One was used for like the bedek habayis, the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, where the other one was used for the korbanos. Hadron Aloch Perek Yud Gimel Shoifaros.